Welcome to the Ordopia and Coach Track podcast with me, Greg Stein, and co-host Daniel Williams. Each week, we have a guest coach on the podcast to tell us about their course and we tackle one of their marketing problems. Okay, guys, we are back with the Ordopia and Coach Track podcast. This week, we are speaking to the amazing Steve Barrett, a fantastic coach who's here to tell us all about his course, Mastering Change. Steve, thank you for joining us. We'd love to know a little bit more about you, a little bit more about how you got into coaching, and then obviously tell us a little bit about your course.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me, first of all. It's a pleasure to be here. So, yeah, I'm Steve Barrett, founder of Black Flag Coaching. My career is leadership. So I worked my way up through various positions from store management in retail up to operations director level positions. Done many sectors, all different sizes of business, from the big corporates down to the small privately owned. And the one thing I always really enjoyed and took great satisfaction from when I was in those leadership roles was helping other people to achieve stuff. So when I look back at the moments in my career that I'm really proud of and the stuff that I can really remember, it's not necessarily about the promotions I had or the things I achieved. It was about the things that I'd helped other people to achieve. And that's kind of what made me make the brave decision to go into coaching and to set up my own practice, because I think it has aligned with my purpose, which is about making things better. And it definitely aligns with my personal values as well. So last year, I made that decision, which lots of people will probably think is crazy, but walking away from a good six-figure corporate job to go it alone. And we'll see how that all turns out. Hey.
Wow, thanks very much, Steve. Thanks. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about your course and what sort of people that's sort of aimed at. What's your target audience? What person would find that course perfect? Who would it really help?
Yeah, it's pretty broad, to be honest, because I think if you look at life and just life in general, whether it's personal life, whether it's work life, there's one consistent thing, and that consistent thing is change. So whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not, change is coming your way, and change comes your way all the time. So I think it appeals to everyone. From my perspective, I've probably been that guy that's always been pretty comfortable with change. I've always seen it as a challenge. I've always seen it as something that's exciting, and I've always embraced it. So I think on the surface, people that have known me has probably thought that things could be a little bit chaotic. I could be a little bit crazy at times, but ultimately the decision-making process that I go through in these situations is kind of the stuff I tried to capture in this course.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Look, Steve, it's an amazing course, and we want to give you the best possible chance for it to succeed, for it to get the recognition that it deserves. So, Dan is an expert. He knows what he's talking about. And Dan, we've had a deep dive, haven't we, into Steve and his course. What's your thoughts on how we can help him most?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of points for today. So I think you're getting obviously good likes and engagement on LinkedIn. That's your main platform. You're not on many other platforms, so that's definitely something we can work on. And then also your main concern that you told us was turning those likes into clients and sending those DMs. Obviously you're trying to help as many people as possible, so you're going to have to send DMs to do that. So yeah, that's going to be our main talking point for today.
Good stuff. I think a good place to start with, isn't it, is this avoiding the hard sell. Yeah. So when we're coaches, generally there's two different types of people. There's type B and there's type A. Type B are the coaches, so Steve, that's me and you. Type A is your Wolf of Wall Street, the markets type, which is Dan.
Don't know about that.
But actually, like, coaches, I think, find it quite hard to sell themselves and to sell their courses. They want to help people, so you have to almost like tap into a mindset which isn't quite you. So, Dan, looking at that question, one thing we thought we'd really talk about and help Steve with was this gap analysis selling, this future self discrepancy, where motivation for me comes from seeing the gap. So Steve's got an amazing course, and he said actually it's quite a varied audience who it reaches out to. So what we tend to do, Dan, isn't it, is we don't send cold DMs, but we have an answer for everyone. Free podcast, free newsletter, low ticket book, medium ticket course, individual coaching. But Dan, how would you start, a DM strategy? What would be some golden nuggets for starting to, maybe cold outreach or messaging people that are interested in Steve's course?
Yeah, well, I think it all starts with the content, really. If your main concern is not wanting to sound annoying, which is obviously Steve, you've got to start with the content. You can't be going into some random people's DMs, just trying to sell in the first message, cold DMs. That's not how we do it, and that's not what's the most effective thing. So what I wrote before was using content as context. So that sounds like some vague marketing nonsense, but I'm going to explain it now. So every DM, you've got to think of every DM as kind of a follow-up and not a cold open, follow-up to their interest in your content. So, for example, you could say, "Hi, I saw you like the post on reframing under pressure. Curious how you approach that in your team," something like that. And then the second point is to ask permission to deepen the conversation. So that could look like, "Let me know if it would be helpful to share how I help leaders like you shift from pressure to clarity, no pressure." So what you're doing there is being helpful, and they've already seen you. They know what you're talking about, and they trust you from the content. And you're basically just giving them free advice. So it's not really spammy. They should be thanking you at the end of the day. And I know you've kind of had a block with sending those, and you don't want to sound spammy, but you've got to weigh up if you want to be willing to sound spammy to like 2 out of 10 of the DMs that you send. Another 2 out of 10 might just not care, but 6 out of 10 are loving the advice. You're helping them, and 2 out of 10 of them want to get on a call and give you all their money. So Greg and you will both know like a lot more than me about the mentality of it. But my perspective is, at the end of the day, you're helping people and you're feeding your family, so it's worth it. I have known people to rely on just inbounds, which is just people messaging you, but none of them can break more than like a couple of calls a month. So they could be getting like 10 plus if they just got themselves out there a bit more. A lot of your audience, you'll actually find, is on the fence about whether to reach out or not. So sending that DM is often like the encouragement they need to give you their money. So that's my first point. I think the actionable steps I wrote down was identifying the likes and connections. That's step one. Then you've got to identify which of those you could help with your coaching. And then step 3 is reaching out with something like we used in the example. So it's not difficult. You've got to commit to it. You've got to do it consistently, and you've got to be yourself. And you're going to find the right people.
Absolutely. Dan, that's a great answer. Steve, I've got a question for you. When I was having a really deep dive into your course, what I was really thinking about was this intolerance of uncertainty, where we live in a world where everyone wants sort of like immediate success. But actually, with mindfulness and a course like this, we know there is no overnight success. We know there is no quick ticket, So better tolerance equals higher resilience, so your course is like a reframing of uncertainty to maybe growth fuel, right? But let's play a game. Tell me, like, I know you said that this is a broad audience who this goes to, but who do you think your course would suit most? What individual in particular do you think would get the best gains, the greatest outcomes from your course?
Cool. That is a good question. I think if I had to sort of draw a picture of that person, it's probably someone who's in a senior leadership position within business, and things around them are starting to shift and starting to change. So it could be restructures. It could be that they're, coming to a point in their career where it's a case of, do I stay or do I go? Probably those type of people. I think that would be that's probably the sort of avatar that I'd put to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's move this over to you then, Dan. This, cognitive reappraisal, right? So you want to change thoughts to change outcomes. Dan, you've got this target market that Steve's after this audience. How would you go about finding these clients, Dan? Would you stick to LinkedIn? Would you maybe look at other platforms? Would you possibly create something like a newsletter? Where would you go with it?
I think if you're posting on LinkedIn like Steve already is, you'd be silly really not to post on X as well. Like even if you just copy and pasted from LinkedIn, because you're potentially going to double your reach there. Worst case, you're gonna waste like 3 minutes a day copy and pasting. So it's a bit of a no-brainer. So I see X really as a fast testing ground for ideas. So I know you asked about efficiency, Steve. So obviously you're a busy guy, as all coaches are nowadays, and you're probably on a lot of calls on a daily basis, solving problems. So what if after every call you wrote like 3 main takeaways you gave your client and then just tweeted them? Because it would take like 5 minutes maximum, and then you also get bonus points for applying it to a real person as well. That always resonates so much better with obviously the people that you want to attract and find on either platform, X or LinkedIn. So that's like 3 tweets, could be 1 line, could be 5 lines, and that's just an easy way to kind of expand your reach and find the right people, is sharing solutions that you've given already, and with that you're also building trust as well. So yeah, that's what I say to that.
That's a fantastic point. Steve, again, when I was having a deep dive and I was looking through your LinkedIn, what was really coming to me was self-determination theory. Acting from values creates better results. I was really impressed by your previous job and experiences. How about you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think that would make a great newsletter. I think some of these experiences that you've had that have created these strengths, you could use for future self visualization, narrative identity, where people learn best from lived stories. What's your thoughts on that? So a good opportunity for some storytelling, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely, and I've been playing with that a little bit. Probably not as much as I should do because there's a couple of things you mentioned there that are really important to me, and that's strengths and values.
Yep.
So I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach, so I'm a strong believer in positive psychology. So most of what I do within coaching is helping people to see the stuff that's already right within them, rather than trying to focus on the bits that aren't or the stuff that they're not happy with, and then trying to turn those inner talents into real Marvel level superhero skills. That's the strengths part of it, and I've kind of lived my life that way. It took me a long time to work it out, but I worked out that I'm the most successful version of me, and I'm the best version of me when I'm doing things in a way that comes natural to me. So that would work. And equally, values is so important to me, and the values theme comes into the course nicely as well, because I talk in the course about how if you're clear on your values and the decisions you make in are values aligned, then guess what? It's the right decision, because ultimately there's no objective right decision in life. The only right decision is the right decision for you, and if it aligns to your values, then absolutely that's the right decision for you. And it's kind of the way I've done things. So I guess most of the stories that I'd have to tell would be strengths and values aligned, because they're kind of like my inner compass, really. So it's how I think, it's how I'm wired, and it's what I live to.
I love that. Steve. That is amazing. Narrative identity. This storytelling is so important in terms of coaching. For me personally, I actually have a line which I don't cross in terms of some things that I talk about. Before I come to you, Dan, let's maybe talk a little bit about this. For me, I don't talk about my wife. I feel like I want to protect her. Maybe that's something that I don't want to share. And I don't talk too much about my lifestyle, and I don't talk too much about my what I did as a profession. But is there anything is there a line that maybe you're not prepared to cross, or are you quite an open book when it comes to this sort of stuff? Because obviously that's the impression that I get when I look through your profile, that actually you're here to tell your story. You want people to know about you and know about Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very open, to be fair. In the stuff that I do in the course, I talk about a personal story around bankruptcy, which happened when I was 30. So I'm comfortable sharing that.
Yep.
I think, again, to align to my purpose, which is making things better, and then the work I do with people around change, I've got to be an open book. And one of the best ways I can be an open book is to, admit to some of those situations where I've, made a right royal cock up of things. So yeah, I'm very open about that. And I think one of the reasons I'm open with it is because for me, it's better to have done things and tried it rather than, avoid the change, avoid the opportunities, play it safe, because I'd much rather have some of the tough times that I've experienced, even the self-inflicted ones, rather than sit there at the end of the day and face this big ugly thing called regret about the things that I could have done but didn't try. So yeah, I'm the guy that's happy to share anything really.
Steve, that's such a great story. Thanks so much. And actually, I think storytelling is crucial when it comes to marketing. And Dan, obviously, we've got an expert here, so I think this is a great time to speak to you about narrative identity. Real storytelling. Steve has got some experiences which make him relatable and credible. Yeah. And he doesn't want to be this sleazy salesman. He wants to great content, makes means that you don't have to have a cold outreach. Yeah. So how would you structure your content or captions? How would you go about, using that storytelling perception, that storytelling method, to relate it back to Steve's course? Tell me a little bit more about caption structure or how you would market that.
Yeah, so I was looking at your LinkedIn, Steve. Obviously, you're posting quite a few videos at the moment, which is obviously a great thing. They do very well on LinkedIn. You can also post them on Instagram and TikTok as well, just for the extra free reach, really. So at the moment, your video content is just podcast clips. Not really much context there, no clear outcome, and if I'm being honest, that they're quite weak openers. So we're always honest here. So the fix here, I'm going to break it down. You've got 4 points really. Number one is you've always got to be opening with a question or like a bold claim. So, for example, most leaders aren't burned out; they're just misaligned with their strengths. Like something like that is going to really speak to the people that you want to speak to. And what it's also going to do is when people see it and they're not like a leader or they're not looking for coaching, they're just going to scroll past. So that's exactly what you want. You're not trying to get the likes. You're not trying to be an influencer or guru. You're trying to resonate with the people that you want to resonate with. Secondly, you got to frame it into a real problem. So something like, here's how one client was running a $3 million business and still feeling stuck every morning. And you could get like a video testimonial from them or get them on a podcast like we're doing here. Case studies always do well. But yeah, I think definitely don't just start without context, because it's just not going to work, especially if people don't know you. Cold audience, which is a lot of people on LinkedIn. And obviously when you start on X, everyone's going to be cold. So you've got to start with that context. And then you've got to deliver like one actionable reframe or win. So, which is what you're doing perfectly at the moment. You're delivering the value. Something like, we didn't overhaul his workflow. We just realigned his week with like 3 core energy strengths, something like that. And then finally, you've got to end with a CTA, which is a call to action. Something like, I go deeper on this in my program on Ordopia. DM me if it resonates, and I'll send it to you. Something like that. So the real takeaway there is for your videos to be clear about who it's for, and what you'll talk about in every video, and then being as concise as possible with your value. Deliver it quickly, and it could even be as simple as DMing people your free Ordopia course if they ask for it, or if you think they can benefit from it, because it's not really being sleazy if you're giving them something for free. Like I don't see how that really works. So they should be thanking you really. So yeah, definitely with that video content, it's got so much potential, but you've just got to be, the first like 3 seconds is the main thing. You've really got to nail that, and it'll go far.
Dan, fantastic advice. One thing I love that Steve's done is created a fantastic free course, so we can come into that. It's interesting talking about giving away stuff for free. And we can come on to lead magnets in a minute, Dan. But Steve, I love this idea of a free course. Tell us a little bit more about that. What was the idea behind it? And again, what sort of person would really benefit from this?
Yeah, so that perfect timing for that, because it's going to be going live on probably tomorrow. Actually, fingers
Wow.
crossed it goes out tomorrow. So yeah, very topical, and it's on from redundancy to reinvention. So bit of a clue in the title, but actually goes a bit deeper than that. So
Yeah.
in my coaching work, one of the strains of that I work with is being hired by businesses when they're offboarding people. So, companies sometimes get in a position where they've got to make cuts. I work with some of those businesses that have got, real care for their people. So, supporting the people that are being impacted by redundancy to help them get ready for the next stage. So, what I've tried to do with this is capture all the elements of that into a course, because ultimately I've been made redundant twice in my life, and it's not a great experience. First time it knocked me for six because it was unexpected. Second time, do you know what, I was kind of ready for it, because it was I kind of had all those skills, because I'd had my way of working, and I'd sort of like learnt from the first time. So I wanted to share this with as many people as possible, because not many businesses invest in extra support for offboarding. So this is something that's open to everyone. So anyone who's facing redundancy, or more importantly, or as importantly, people that have got that fear of redundancy, because you've only got to go on LinkedIn at the moment, and probably every third, fourth person you scroll by has got that dreaded green circle on open to work. So it's you turn the news on and it's job cuts, it's doom, it's gloom. So it's kind of a free resource that's out there for anyone who's either facing it or is believes they could be at risk of facing it, because those that could be at risk, it's a bit like a head start. Take this course for free, do all these bits and pieces that you can do that really get you in a great position for finding your next thing. And a big thing in the course is about finding your dream next role. So not just settling for anything or going panic stations and firing out millions of different job applications which come back as rejects, or you get ghosted and then it kills your confidence anymore. This is about really focusing on what you want, and then everything you do after that is aimed around where you want to go and the person that could be recruiting for that dream role.
Wow. Steve, what powerful stuff. Dan, I've got some serious questions for you about that in a minute. Steve, I just want to say that's amazing. And you can't lead others down a path if you haven't walked it yourself. And that narrative identity, that storytelling from being in that position, lived it, learned from it, gone through it twice, there to help others. What an amazing thing. What an amazing experience for people that can read it. And obviously, what an opportunity to come on a podcast like this and to talk about it. But Dan, how would you repurpose that message? How would you go about getting out that storytelling narrative that he needs to get out? This idea that you can't lead others down a path if you haven't walked it yourself. What's the best way that Steve can put out his story?
Yeah, so I think it's all about the hook, like we talked about before. All about kind of sharing your story is massive. We were talking about this last week with our other Ordopia person. So yeah, definitely that. I think with a lead magnet, obviously, your course is mastering change, which is something a lot of people could learn from. And the position of the lead magnet, getting it out there, is what most coaches struggle with. So I think you've kind of got 3 stages to releasing the lead magnet. You've got to build up to it, kind of ask your clients for feedback, because if your current clients, because if they don't like it, then chances are your people on LinkedIn won't like it either. I think also asking them why they bought off you in the first place. I think what you'll find is a lot of times you kind of resonated with them. They kind of saw themselves in past you. So obviously you can help them with that because you've been through it yourself. And that's something not that you should milk, but you should definitely lean into it, because it's a massive advantage, really. So yeah.
I absolutely love that. Steve, one thing that really comes through massively when you talk about yourself and you talk about your course is authenticity. And I feel like on LinkedIn, we're talking the difference between LinkedIn, Instagram, X, etc., etc. I feel that's something that's missing. Almost sometimes things are a little too polished. And I think, I read something recently that 86% of people want authentic brands. Dan, would you say that Steve needs to be, super honest, as vulnerable as possible, in terms of talking about this unscripted, or is there like a level to how open and honest he should be about his experiences?
Well, I know Steve said before there's no objective right answers in life, and that's kind of similar to my perspective on this. It's very personal. What you should be doing, though, regardless of who you are, is sharing how you can help people and why you can help people as well, how you're qualified, how you've helped people in the past as well. If you're uncomfortable sharing your story, you could share client stories, how you've helped them, what position they were in at the start to the end, those transformations that they resonate a lot. But yeah, you can do as much or as little as you want. It really depends on who you're trying to attract and how intense you want to go with it. Obviously, as a coach, you've got to be more personal because it's a personal relationship, isn't it? But yeah, I think there's no objective right answer there.
Yeah, Dan, that's a great answer. For me, it's this reciprocal bias, if you like. That giving value, people want to give back. That 82% of people are more interested in brands after consuming helpful content. Free podcasts, free emails. Building trust. To nurture leads, so Steve doesn't have to go about that awkward, sleazy DM sort of stuff. Steve, what do you see for the future? How do you see this growing? Do you see more to the course? Do you see maybe a community, maybe an extensive newsletter, a series, a book? Any different plans to expand on it?
Yeah, I mean, I've got so much going on at the moment, sort of, business and personal life, but a book is on the horizon for sure.
Wow. Yeah.
I've put that on. That was on my list for 2026. 2026 feels like it's coming around pretty damn quick already, though. So we'll see about that one. But yeah, books on the list. Started playing with newsletters. I've got a lot to learn on that. I know. I can probably be more effective with it. But yeah, and I think with the business, the business for me was never ever about getting rich. It's never ever about making loads of money. I'm not a materialistic guy. For me, it's more about aligning with those values of supportiveness, authenticity, boldness, curiosity, and optimism, and just really putting them into play and just creating this life where I'm doing what I really love doing, and helping as many people as I can along the way.
Steve, I love that so much. I'll give you a stat. Me and Dan know the stat so well. 86% of coaches quit or fail in their first year. And I think that most of that, Dan, isn't it? It's not because they're bad coaches, because they're bad marketers, but also, really importantly, they're too invested in making money. That they're not in it for the right reasons. They don't want to help people, or that's not their priority. What really shines through for me when I see your profiles, when I see the content you're putting out, when I've got to know you personally, and of course you're here to help people. You can't lead others down the line if you haven't walked it yourself. Dan, I think this leads us really well into that big question: DM strategy. So for us at the Coach Trap, we have an answer for everything. We've planned it out, haven't we, Dan? Free. And we lead them through something called gap analysis. So it's interesting to talk about, a newsletter, a book. Dan, anything you want to add to that? Is that a good place to start, an indirect way for a newsletter or a podcast or something, and then, stagger it maybe with, a book? Or is that, not in depth enough? I have a course. If you want something more, come to me for one-to-one, or the other way around. Is a one-to-one too expensive? I have a course, I have a book. That's how we go about it, Dan, isn't it? In our gap analysis, if you like. But anything you want to add, is that a good entry level to sort of help with that main question for Steve?
Yeah, so generally I would always recommend going in for the high ticket stuff first, just because you're not famous yet. You're not kind of got that. You need to get those reviews, those testimonials, the social proof to sell the books, to sell the courses, all of this stuff. With the DMs side, though, I think just because you're sending a DM doesn't mean you're a sleazy salesman. I think there's two types of people that send DMs. There's the ones that try and make more money, and the ones that are trying to help more people. Because obviously you've got to send DMs to help more people. You've got to get yourself out there. And this kind of links into using your free course from Autopia, using it to further the trust you're building in the DMs. So when you send that helpful message, or when you ask them what kind of resonated with them, and they have a problem related to that lead magnet, you could just send it over. And it does work miracles as well, because they don't expect that much value from someone they haven't even paid yet. And they almost feel indebted, like Greg said. But it obviously isn't scammy. It's helping people understand, what you're doing and how you can help them. So definitely, you definitely need to send DMs to get out there, and you shouldn't be scared.
Great answer, Dan. So Dan, I've got one final question for you. So to really help Steve's course, should he be using his free course on Autopia to impress people so much that it's so good and they can see just how powerful his message is and how great his coaching is, that's the greatest incentive to go into the big course? Or is there another way to it?
I think using a course to sell a course is kind of a weird idea. I think using your content to sell it would be more wise. Those videos, especially, because obviously they're seeing your face, they're building more of that trust, and you're calling them out. You're telling them that this is for you. This is the kind of person that's going to resonate with this course, and then they can either buy that course, or to get people into your higher ticket stuff. I would use the free course in the DMs. I wouldn't kind of advertise that as much, obviously, just because it's so valuable, and you don't want to be just giving stuff away for free without that personal touch in the DMs. So I would definitely go with the content first, to sell the course.
Dan, amazing as always. So Steve, I've got a big question for you. So I've seen you do a few podcasts. Your content's great. Anything in particular you want this audience to see, or where's the best place to find you to find this amazing course?
Well, I think the conversation. I mean, the stuff Dan's shared with me today is amazing. It really is. I think because there's always been a bit of a mental blocker about probably doing more with the outreach stuff, because probably went against the authenticity value. But I think the stuff Dan's talked about makes me feel really comfortable with doing that now. In terms of where people will find me, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. That's my platform. And yeah, I think that's probably the best place to find me for now, or on the Autopia platform.
Yeah, that's amazing. Dan, one last thing before we go. One thing that I see as Steve a lot is actually, knowing I'm a coach, his message is quite similar to mine, and I love it. One of the best things, Steve, that happened to me was me meeting Dan. When I tried to put out the content on my own, I was always safe. I was always guarded. I was a mix between trying to be authentic and trying to be someone else. One of the best things I did was actually look for advice, which is coaching in itself, isn't it? Coach being coached by someone else. Dan, would you agree with that? And is there any major take homes for, a coach out there, someone selling a course, someone looking to get the same sort of target audience as Dan, as Steve?
Yeah, so I think the main thing was the DMs. So letting your posts build trust before the DMs go out, and offering the insight and not the pitch. So it links in with a lead magnet. Just sending that first, building that trust, and asking for permission to sell, kind of thing. Like, let me know if you'd want a few thoughts on what I've seen with people in your position in the past, and definitely applying that to real people as well that you've helped, and even yourself especially. That's really going to go down really well.
Amazing. Great insight. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on the Autopia and Coach Trap podcast. Steve, thank you for the insights. Dan, as always, that's why we call him Yoda. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to find out more about Steve's course, it's on Autopia. If you want to find out more about the Coach Trap, check out our website. And guys, until next time, see you soon. And remember, don't fall into the Coach Trap.